over Ben Simmons.
Second straight night, Ben Simmons goes for a contest on a big dunk, and it does not work. I give you respect. He didn't try to take one of those weak charges, but Kevin Knox got him there.
Nah, you don't get no respect for that. That was an and one right there. Now, Kevin Knox didn't make the free throw, but Kevin Knox just put Ben Simmons on a poster. You don't get no
Jared
respect for
Allen, yes, someone finally did. Marquise Chris with the tomahawk.
Listen, I'm going to say this again. Jared Allen tries to block all these dunks. He's the best dunk blocker in the league. He even gets a piece of this one. But Marquise Chris has too much power on it, man. I think it's his third team since the last 8 months for Marquise Chris.
CC, I ain't going to criticize Jared Allen like I did with Ben Simmons. I got a little more respect for that.
And he got the best afro in the NBA. New York respect to the afro. That's what happened. Oh, Kevin Knox was great. Oh, Jared Allen gets a pass. Where do those kings play? New York City. Where's Candy to Radio? New York City. I see through you, man.
Finally, a little defense, guys. T-Wolves and Rockets and Josh Okogie shutting down James Harden. You don't see that often. Nice block.
Oh, the little step back wasn't there. There's a great...
Man, they had Harden's number last night, man. They made Harden, and they shut him down, bro.
Yeah, held him to 42.
Oh, yeah. They made him work for it.
CC, I didn't know they like block parties in Minnesota.
Yeah, they had a couple exchanges in this game now. We're getting some playoff intensity in some of these NBA games.
It's a great a picture of right when he blocked the shot of Kogie's eyes totally closed.
To the NFL now, the Ravens have agreed to trade Joe Flacco to the Broncos for what's reported to be a fourth-round pick. And that means they're fully committed to Lamar Jackson, who led Baltimore to the playoffs after going 6-1 down the stretch. Chris Katie, how confident are you in the Ravens moving forward with Lamar under center?
I'm pretty confident in the Ravens with Lamar as their starting quarterback, just because based on Lamar's skill set, I think the offensive game plan suits what the Ravens do best, which is play really good defense and special teams. It's all about complementary football. So when you look at points per game, I mean, it was pretty similar to when Joe Flacco was the starting quarterback for the Baltimore Ravens, but they weren't having the success as a team. They were 4-5. So, I mean, when they inserted Lamar Jackson as the starting quarterback in Week 11, the Ravens led the NFL in rush yards per game, in run percentage. They were running the ball 63% of the time on offense, and they led in rushing first downs. So I think those things are important to consider when you try to break down the move for trading Joe Flacco. Also, you got to factor in the compensation. They do pick up a mid-round draft pick. They got a fourth-round pick. And the fact that they're able to save roughly $10 million in salary cap space, that's going to allow them to fill out the rest of their roster. So I like the moves for the Ravens. I mean, we knew this was coming when they moved up to draft Lamar Jackson in the first round. We just didn't know that it was going to happen so soon.
Yeah, and I believe they're really helping out Lamar Jackson by doing it so early in the offseason. I like the fact, because people talk about they like competition, but ultimately, man, you want to be named as the guy. You don't want to be looking over your shoulder. Guys won the Super Bowl. Guys had more success with the organization. Guys making a lot of money. Man, do me a favor. You like me? Ship him on down the road somewhere. So when I come to work, I have more of a comfort level in my work environment.
And I would, tell me if I'm wrong, competition at the position you played, is very different than competition at the only position other than kicker where there's only one guy that can play it. Like if you were early in your career.
And I don't want to get in a throwing competition with a quarterback who's a dual threat. Like, I don't want quarterbacks in practice throwing the ball better than him every day.
Right, when Lamar, so much of his utility is with his legs. Now, I got a question for both you guys. Going into next season, how much of teams that are opposing the Ravens, we don't know who they play week 1, schedule hasn't come out yet, but whomever it is, let's just say it's the Browns, that will they look at what the Chargers did in the playoff game, all those defensive backs on the field, and the way it totally slowed down what had been such a potent passing attack? What was it, 7 DBs on 90+% of the plays? Will teams try to duplicate that, since we saw that was the only time all year with Lamar as the quarterback they couldn't run the ball?
Let me tell you what the Ravens need to do. If they put all them little small guys on the field, they need to break their little pencil necks and run the football. A lot like New England did against the Rams. That's the counter punch to putting all those small guys on the field. Man, run the ball. Those guys aren't used to those run fits. They're not used to being. God bless them.
Thank you.
God bless them, because they're going to have some injuries. Because that's what they
But the Ravens were trying to run the ball in that game. Why weren't they effective?
But they ran to the edges of the defense, which plays into the hands of a defense that has 7 defensive backs on the field, because they got speed on the field. So you have to run at them and take advantage of the lack of ties defensively. Like, that didn't make any sense. When I was watching that game, I couldn't figure out why Marty Morningwig wouldn't decide to use that big physical offensive line and run straight at the undersized defensive front of the Los Angeles Chargers.
And I believe that part of Canty, without talking to him, and I'm hoping I get this one right, Canty believes that how Baltimore, how they make their teams up, how they support their players, that being when you have a Ray Lewis, man, you need ginormous defensive tackles. So it's Ray's skill level to be able to read, recognize, and get to the football, that it will be at its maximum. So you take advantage of that. They have done that with their players. When they had Jamal Lewis and that running attack, they had a ginormous offensive line. When they had Trent Dilfer, they supported him as a quarterback. Flacco, what'd they do? They went out and got speed. They always had a running attack. They always had play action to throw the ball down the field. You got to support Lamar Jackson. You got to get a couple wide receivers. And I talked to Lamar this offseason. He's ready for this challenge. He realizes that he didn't throw the ball as well as he'd like to. He's going to be working on all those things. So you give him a tremendous amount of confidence when you move on from the previous franchise quarterback early in the offseason. Now let's just watch for Baltimore, who I believe Ozzie Newsome did retire, but they've been one of the most stable franchises as far as getting good players, drafting players, free agency. Let's see how this organization now supports their franchise quarterback in Lamar Jackson.
And we have to remember, the other conversation with the Ravens last year, once Lamar took over a couple weeks in, I kept saying, and I think you guys agreed, was what they were doing, having him run the ball 15-plus times per game, was not long-term sustainable, but it could get him through that season. I think in the last 30 years, aside from Tim Tebow games, Lamar Jackson has 4 of the 5 highest rush attempts by a quarterback in any game. And it was just in the 8 games he played last year. He had 17, 18, 20, 26 in his first game. That cannot be the plan next year. He will get hurt at some point. The reason we said it was short-term sustainable is the reason it wasn't sustainable was eventually you will get hurt. On a short enough timeline, the risk is minimal. On a long enough timeline, the risk is 100%. So he has to get better as a passer. He can run the ball maybe 8 to 10 times a game, but he was up 18 to 20 times. That's something that cannot be the plan for the entirety of the season, in my eyes.
No, I absolutely agree with you. That's not sustainable. Lamar Jackson is going to have to learn how to win from the pocket, but you have time based on the other things you have around Lamar Jackson, namely that defense and your special teams. You got 2 of the best kickers in Justin Tucker and Sam Cook in the National Football League. So, I mean, I look at this situation with the Ravens and say what they were doing with Joe Flacco in terms of the pay scale, that wasn't sustainable for them. When you're paying a quarterback $20+ million a year, he's got to be able to elevate the play of everybody around him. Like, Nick, you always talk about the Matt Ryan line.
Yeah.
And when you start paying quarterbacks that are below the Matt Ryan line, market value on a contract extension, then it's going to hurt your football team. That's the reason the Ravens, with Joe Flacco as a starting quarterback, only made the playoffs once since that Super Bowl run, and that was 2014. So I was there, and I understand exactly that dynamic of that team, and they lost pieces from that Super Bowl team, and the Ravens weren't able to replace those pieces because Joe Flacco was taking up so much of their salary cap.
And now that it's Lamar, defenses will have time to prepare, and they know exactly what kind of offense the Ravens are going to put out there, though. Chris, we'll see you later on in the show. Coming up, did Kyler Murray's agent just call Nick Wright a loser?
He did.
We'll let you decide.